I work as a janitor at a commuter college campus. I won't disclose the name of the college for my own privacy and safety. My job involves cleaning hallways, classrooms, and bathrooms across different buildings on campus. I usually work evening hours, from around 1 p.m. to 9 p.m., when the campus is relatively empty. It was a stormy night. During the summer, the college offers summer courses. So yes, I work during summers too. This was one of the biggest storms of that year, strong winds and heavy rain. It was later in my shift, somewhere between 7 and 8 p.m. I was in a building called the Activity Center. This building doesn't hold regular classes. It has a large ballroom, a small theater, and several rooms used for general purposes. This building is usually very quiet, especially when no events are happening. And at that moment, I might have been the only person in the entire building. I was working in the downstairs section, known as the game room, when suddenly, everything went dark, pitch black. The only thing visible was a red exit sign near the doorway. The power had gone out. I took out my phone and called another janitor who was working in a different building. He told me the power was out in his building too, which meant the entire campus had lost power. After the call, I figured my job was done, so I started following the glow of the exit sign to make my way out. But as I got closer to the door, I nearly froze in fear. I saw someone peeking their head from around the stairway. I called out, thinking it might be a staff member, but before I could even say anything, they disappeared upstairs. I immediately ran toward the stairs, because if I had to lock the building, I needed to make sure everyone was out. When I got upstairs, it was completely dark. Only a few backup lights were on, very dim, barely lighting anything. I started calling out, telling anyone there to leave the building. I walked through the hallway. This hallway formed a large circle around the ballroom. I checked each room one by one, but during that time, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned around immediately, but there was no one there. I kept moving forward and finally checked the last bathroom. It was empty too. I thought the building was empty, and I could lock it up now. I started heading toward the front door when suddenly I heard footsteps again. This time, I knew someone was behind me. I turned around and I saw it, a silhouette, standing in the darkness, right at the edge of a dim light. I said, "You need to leave the building." But the way it was standing made me feel uneasy, and suddenly it turned and ran, disappearing into the darkness. I didn't know what to do, but chasing someone or physically removing them wasn't part of my job. I continued toward the front door, planning to call the police once I got outside. When I reached the door, I turned back one last time, and about 20 feet away, I saw it again, the same silhouette, this time hiding behind a half-open door. I call it a silhouette because I couldn't see any features, no face, no details, just a dark figure. I immediately left the building and called campus police. After some time, they arrived and searched the entire building, but they found no one. Later that night, I received a phone call from campus police. They asked me to describe the person I saw, but I couldn't. I never saw their face. Then they told me something I will never forget. They said there was a killer in the area, hiding, and a local resident had spotted him near the college. When I hung up the phone, a chill ran down my spine. I couldn't sleep that night, and for a long time after that, I didn't feel safe. It was a normal, cold night in February. My wife and I were lying in bed in our room, watching a late-night movie before going to sleep. During the movie, suddenly, the TV shut off, and the room went dark. My wife and I both let out a grunt in annoyance at the same time. The lamps, the clocks, Everything had gone out, which meant the power was out. I told my wife I'd go outside and check if the neighbors had lost power too. I opened the front door and stepped outside onto the stoop. Only for a second or two, because it was freezing outside, but I could clearly see the lights in the neighbors' houses were still on, which meant the problem was only in our house. Our fuse box is in the basement, inside a small boiler room. It didn't seem likely that the issue was there, but I didn't have any other option. So I grabbed a flashlight and went downstairs. One weird thing about our house is, to reach the basement door, you have to walk down the stairs first, meaning the door itself is at basement level. I was tired, so I slowly made my way down the steps. When I got to the bottom, I turned the doorknob and tried to open it, but it wouldn't open. I pushed a little harder, still nothing. I thought maybe my wife had locked it, so I went back upstairs and asked her where the basement key was. She got out of bed and said she'd get it. I followed her to the kitchen, where we keep the keys. She flipped through several keys, then pulled out the basement key and handed it to me, and went back upstairs to the bedroom. I went back down, put the key in the door, unlocked it, and tried to open it again. But it still wouldn't open. I pushed harder, but it didn't even move. I went back upstairs again and called my wife down. She came down with a flashlight, making fun of me for not being able to open a wooden door. She didn't even use the key. She just turned the handle, gave it one push, and the door creaked open. I was completely confused. I could have sworn the door wouldn't open before. I joked and said, "Maybe I loosened it up for you." She went back upstairs. I stepped into the basement and flipped the light switch, but nothing happened. It was still dark. I walked toward the boiler room with my flashlight, where the fuse box was. I went inside and started flipping the switches, one by one, and finally, the lights came back on. I felt relieved and shut the small fuse box door. At that exact moment, I heard a sound from outside, the creaking of one of the basement closet doors. I peeked outside. There were two doors. One was closed, and the other slightly open. My heart started beating faster. I slowly walked toward the door and stopped about 2 feet away. I listened, and at that moment, a thought crossed my mind. What if the fuse didn't shut off by itself? What if someone turned it off? And what if the door wasn't locked earlier, but instead, someone was holding it shut? I froze. After a few moments of silence, I heard it. From inside the closet, a deep, human exhale. I ran. I sprinted up the stairs, and this time, I made sure to lock the door. I have never run upstairs that fast in my life. I went into the bedroom and called out to my wife. I was terrified, and I'm not ashamed to admit it. I immediately called the police. Before they arrived, we heard the sound of glass breaking outside. I looked out the window, but couldn't see anything in the dark. When the police arrived, I took them to the basement. But by then, the closet door was fully open, and it was empty. We saw broken glass in one corner and things scattered all over the floor. Whoever was in there climbed up, broke the window, and escaped from the basement, meaning they got away, and they were never caught. That night, we kept all the lights on in the house and locked every door. The next day, we had the window fixed. We don't even live in a bad neighborhood, which makes it even more terrifying that something like this could happen to anyone. In my early 20s, I worked as a construction worker and engineer in the Philadelphia area. My co-workers and I did basic work, like constructing add-ons to already existing structures. For example, adding basements to buildings or extending the main floor. In 2012, during one of our jobs, we were assigned to build a small basement in a coroner/dentist building. This basement was supposed to have a bathroom and 2 large storage areas. By that time, we had already made serious progress. The basement had working lights, and they were fully functional. The basement had been completely sealed off, meaning there was no longer a large open hole in the ground. And since the lights were working, we were able to work down there at night. One of my co-workers, Jordan, went upstairs and then outside to work on the add-on section. I was left alone in the basement, working on some electrical components. I wasn't a professional electrician, but I had a basic understanding of what I was doing. Then suddenly, the power went out. I immediately knew it had nothing to do with what I was doing. I figured there must have been a power outage in the area. None of us kept our phones on us because of how dirty our hands would get. We all kept our phones upstairs in our jackets that we had hung up. But one thing we always had with us was a flashlight. I was just about to grab my flashlight when I heard something, a strange rattling noise. If I had to describe it, it sounded like a bag of coins being shaken. Not exactly, but close enough. The sound was coming from the small bathroom. I immediately took out my flashlight, turned it on, and aimed it toward the bathroom. We had already installed the bathroom door, and it was slightly closed. Because of that, I couldn't clearly see inside. The sound didn't resemble anything related to construction or infrastructure, so I assumed it might be one of my coworkers. I walked up to the door and placed my hand on its edge. I paused for a moment, then opened it. As soon as the door opened, my flashlight revealed the inside, and I saw someone, a person dressed entirely in black, standing in the corner of the room, facing the wall. I couldn't see their face. Then suddenly, they turned their head, slowly, like a deer reacting to a sound in the woods. And when they looked at me, I saw only one thing: their eyes, glowing. I immediately slammed the door shut and ran up the stairs. I started looking for my coworkers. They were all outside about to pack up and leave since the nearby buildings had also lost power. I counted them immediately. There were only 3, which meant whoever I saw downstairs wasn't one of them. I asked all of them if anyone else had been in the building that night. They all shook their heads. At that point, I had no choice but to take them downstairs and show them. I led them into the basement, into that small room. But, just as I feared, that person was gone. The entire basement was empty. Obviously, they didn't believe me, but I couldn't force them to. We all went back upstairs and started packing up. I had the key, so I had to lock the building after everyone left. Once everyone was gone, I sat in my car, watching them drive away. But I had a strange feeling. I can't explain it, but it felt like I needed to go back down and check again. I took a deep breath, got out of the car, and unlocked the building again. I went back down to the basement, this time with 2 sources of light, my flashlight and my phone. I walked down the stairs and stopped at the last step. It was completely silent, so silent that it made me uneasy. I was about to turn around when suddenly that same sound, rattle, 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 coming from that same room. I didn't even look back. I ran up the stairs, slammed the door shut, locked the building, and drove straight home. Luckily, it was Saturday, so I didn't have to come back until Monday. After that, I never worked in that basement alone again. And within a couple of weeks, we finished the job. Nothing strange ever happened again. But what I saw that night, I have never forgotten.